Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel, and we're going to continue on with our walkthrough of Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings, and specifically working through the entirety of the Stormlight archive. Working slowly, obviously, but I hope this will be a fun thing that we can do together. And again, I was thinking about this a little bit, and let me know what you think, maybe how I should approach this. I've read the story, all of them. I know how it ends. But I think I'm going to read this and present it in a way as if we're reading through it together for the first time. Not that I want to be deceitful or, like spoil anything even. And I think that's kind of more of where I'm trying to go with it. I'd love for someone who could watch this, maybe is following along, and appreciate it if you're reading it for a second or third time, because as I bring things up, it's going to be as if we're coming across this for the first time. But if you haven't read it and maybe you're following along reading with, I hope it'll be a chance for you to sort of learn along the way. And so as I read through these things, as I share details, it's going to be from that perspective. So again, I don't want to you to watch this and think when I say something, even if I know the twist that's coming later, I'm still going to present it as if I don't know what's happening. And we're going to take the book at face value. And I may not always get that right, because I may unknowingly sometimes just say something knowing what it'll turn into, or call someone or something by the wrong name because of what we learned later. But that's what I'm going to try to do. And so we're going to continue on now with chapter 1, which is in part 1, entitled Above Silence. And something Sanderson does is he gives you the names of the characters who have a first-person perspective. So in part 1, Above Silence, we're going to have two characters that we're going to meet. And one is named Kaladin, and one is named Shalon. And so we are reading chapter 1, not word for word, but chapter 1, Stormblessed. It's the name of this chapter. We come to find that this is another time jump 5 years later from when the king was killed. In the prologue, I believe the prelude was the first part, yes. And so when the king was killed, we have another time jump 5 years later. And the chapter opens with a young new recruit who has been relocated to a new army squad. We actually are going to find this squad is on the field of battle, about to charge and face the enemy. And so an old squad member named Dalit, he comforts this young recruit named Sen by letting him know that this squad is different. And it's different because their squad leader, Kaladin Stormblessed, is different. Sen, though, is not convinced. But stops when a man just a few years older than him enters the camp. And let me read for you the quote from the book. It comes from page 39. The 30 men around Sen snap to attention, raising their spears in salute. This is Kaladin Stormblessed, Sen thought incredulously. This youth? And this squad leader that apparently Dalit and the other men respect so much and believe that there's something different about him, he's not seeing it from the first time that he sees Kaladin. The army belongs to Bright Lord Amaram. And it had marched to address a border skirmish by a neighboring Bright Lord, and the battle again was about to commence. Even here we begin to see some of the political hierarchy. We have the term Bright Lord, and bright, the idea of light, specifically light that is brought about by storms that we're going to learn about further on, is all going to center around the idea of actual light, actual visible light. A neighboring Bright Lord is invading this territory owned by Bright Lord Amaram, and he even is not the top of the totem pole. There is another man above him who we're going to meet later in the story. The armies had lined up facing each other. Archers, spearmen, swords, and shields were in abundance. Stormblessed squad, though Kaladin Stormblessed, his squad moves their way to the front of the line, much to Sen's dismay. And their armies begin marching. But the slow, controlled march does not last long as arrows begin flying in the air towards Amaram's army. The untrained soldiers break out into a sprint and begin running as fast as they can. Kaladin and his men, though, because they're at the front, they run faster and are able to get in front of the arrows. So the arrows are flying in. They're able to get past them. I guess behind is probably a better way to describe it. And the armies crash into each other and the real fighting begins. Kaladin leads his squad from the front, signaling to his men by banging on his shield in specific patterns and with specific rhythms. And the fighting is absolutely raging all around them until Sen finds himself face to face with an enemy squad. And we're going to read here on page 44. The enemy soldiers charged right for him. He had to stand. He had to face them. He yelled, stabbing his spear at the lead soldier. The man casually knocked the weapon aside with his shield, then drove his short spear into Sen's thigh. Let me keep reading though. Sen stumbled backward, dropping his spear and shield. He fell to the rock ground, splashing in someone else's blood. His foe raised a spear high, a looming silhouette against the stark blue sky, ready to aim it into Sen's heart, and then he was there. Squad leader Stormblessed. Kaladin's spear came as if out of nowhere, narrowly deflecting the blow that was to have killed Sen. Kaladin set himself in front of Sen, alone, facing down 6 spearmen. He didn't flinch, he charged. Kaladin's going to save Sen's life, and expertly, after he defeats those men, bandage him up and allow him to continue to limp along following the skirmish. However, as Kaladin is regrouping, the battle sort of moves past them. Kaladin notices a bright lord on horseback in the distance, and he grows very cold. We read on page 45, Kaladin watched the light eyes with a seething hatred. So actually even the color of people's eyes is important with determining how important they are in the pecking order. We continue though. He gathered a few soldiers and raced across the field to try and defeat the Bright Lord, hoping it will win them a promotion to the ongoing battles on the Shattered Plains, a place, we read, where fighting will really mean something. Sen asks Dalit why Kaladin made such an effort to bring him into this squad. Dalit shook his head, we read on page 47. It's just how he is. Hates the thought of young kids like you, barely trained going to battle. Dalit got a far-off look. I think you all remind him of someone. So here we have some foreshadowing. Clearly something in Kaladin's past is causing him to look out for maybe these younger, untrained soldiers who are just going to get thrown into the battle and be butchered. Something in his past causes him to use his own money, his own resources to try to get these men into his squad. The quiet moment, though, ends abruptly when in the distance a rumble begins to grow and a shard bearer in full plate and sword galloped onto the field. We conclude with page 47. It was like the Almighty himself had taken form to walk the battlefield. And why would you fight the Almighty? Sen closed his eyes. And that's where the chapter ends. Definitely a cliffhanger. This shard bearer, of course, we met a shard bearer when the king was dressed as a shard bearer and was fighting the assassin in white in the last video, the last couple chapters. And so this is where this chapter ends, and we're left on a cliffhanger, right? Well, we jump to the chapter 2 of the book, entitled Honor is Dead. And we're going to have another time jump. I mean, we are jumping crazy amounts here, right? And so this is 8 months later. So from that battle under Bright Lord Amaram's army facing another Bright Lord's army because of that border skirmish, we now come to chapter 2 entitled Honor is Dead. And I'll say at this point, at the heading of each chapter, there is a quote that, in all honesty, does not seem to make sense. Let me read one of these inscriptions. We read, just quote, 10 orders. We were loved once. Why have you forsaken us, Almighty, shard of my soul? Where have you gone? And then after that it reads, collected on the 2nd day of Kakash, year 1171, 5 seconds before death. Subject was a light-eyed woman in her 3rd decade. So there's no other explanation. Actually, that has happened each of these chapters. There's been an inscription like that with the essentially collected a few seconds before death. So that's really all we know about this. Whoever this light-eyed woman was, this seems to be what she said before she died. But 8 months later, and with no explanation other than a time jump, we find Kaladin, chapter 2, locked in a cage, being carted off as a slave. We read that it was mealtime, and other slaves in the cage wagon were protectively guarding their meal rations. And Kaladin, we read, bears 3 brands on his forehead. Let me read the description. On page 49, the first 2 made a glyph pair given to him 8 months ago on his last day in Amaram's army. The 3rd was fresh, given to him by his most recent master, Shash. The last glyph read, which means dangerous. So something has happened. A few of his fellow prisoners try to strike up conversations with Kaladin, but to no avail. There's a sick prisoner, and Kaladin is able to sort of remember some type of past training. I'm trying to remember in this chapter if it gives you sort of how he's able to decipher what's wrong with him. But let me see here if I can find it here real quick. I don't believe so. It just kind of brings you into his mindset. He's thinking, he's hearing that this prisoner is sick, this prisoner's coughing, and Kaladin sort of even subconsciously diagnoses him and is able to understand himself what he needs in order to get better. He actually tells the wagon master this as he walks by with another one of the guards, and he tells him that all he needs is water, more than normal that they've been getting, and he'll get over it. However, the wagon master and his brutes drag him out of the wagon and beat the sick man to death. Though part of Kaladin's old self stirs, he is unable to do anything for this man. And when he just pretty much collapses in absolute disgust and hopelessness, a strange windspren appears to him in the form of a young woman, which is not incredibly uncommon for larger spren, Kaladin notices. But Kaladin is shocked when the spren speaks to him and addresses him by name, right? And so we come to this idea of spren, and though we don't know much, really anything about it, what my mind went to the first time I read this was a fairy. That's sort of the first thing my mind went to. And this specific spren took the form of a young woman, and she speaks to Kaladin and calls him by name. They have a few short words, but neither really communicates anything of substance. Well, Kaladin sinks down into the caged wagon, defeated, as we read on page 59, that cursed windspren kept darting around him, looking confused. And that's really the last part of the chapter. So something has happened, as I mentioned already. Something has happened in Kaladin's past on that battlefield that day, fighting for Lord Amaram. And eight months later, here he is in the back of a slave wagon being carted off to another master. We find out the more that we read actually in this chapter, one of the things that they were able to get out of him, his fellow prisoners, was that Kaladin has tried to escape many times. And I believe we read up to about 10 times he's tried to escape, but he seems to have had his spirit really beaten down, and he's not in a good place, right? He's not in a good place at all. But this windspren is an interesting situation, and so this is where we're going to end it. Chapter 2. Kaladin goes from a position of authority, of honor and respect, with among his men at least, to here a place of real defeat, of real suffering. And that's going to be Kaladin's perspective. The next couple chapters, we're going to get to the next character, Shallan, and sort of her origin. First time we're going to meet her, and we'll really look forward to reading that. But that is chapter 1 and 2 of part 1 of The Way of Kings, and we've met Kaladin. And so let me know what you think about those 2 chapters. What do you think happened to Kaladin? And why do you think a man who was so motivated to help others would find himself so defeated here? That must be a real big struggle. So enjoy reading it. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. Are you reading along? Have you read it? And I don't know whether in the comments we should have a space down there that you can maybe share some connections to future parts of the story. But maybe I'll try to keep my description here as spoiler-free as possible. But down in the comments, it may be fair game. So have fun, and thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next video.